pausing me. All right, welcome back. Now, this is one of those where you have a couple ways that you could figure this out. So this is the part on your quiz that was underlined right there. One, go through and do what I said about crossing it out and see if it makes sense. The two little brothers of Legia's host family, so we're going to cross it out, had to be moved upstairs to the room Legia was using. Well, that makes completely sense if I take that out. So you know that you can completely remove this information, okay? Who had volunteered to move to those bedrooms for a year, okay? So you know that you need a comma here and here. Well, that crosses out this one because there's no comma there, okay? Now you've got to look at another one of the rules that I gave you. Prepositional phrases. To move and to those bedrooms, those are two prepositional phrases. You cannot have them, you can't break up prepositional phrases. So you know it's no change. Okay. This is where you're down to 2. And so now you have to figure out, do I need a comma here or not? This is that rule I was telling you about, looking for the beginning of your clause and making sure you have 2 commas. Who had volunteered? If you just took that out, would the rest make sense? The two little brothers of Legia's host family to move? No. Okay. And so you know that you need one here and here because you've got to have, this one was there, so you know you need your second comma. And so it makes it C. Down the street from the college I attend, in the part that is underlined here is college I attend. The Save You laundromat is always open and someone is always there. You don't have to worry about necessarily this part because we're focusing on this part. Down the street from the college I attend, the Save You laundromat is always open and someone is always there. So I'm just going to, in my mind, go, I'm not even going to think about that one. What I have to ask myself is this a dependent clause? Down the street, okay, there's a prepositional phrase, so it ties to this, from the college, okay. So down the street from the college. Now, is this needed? Or is this part of your dependent clause? Okay, so let's look at it. The Save You laundromat, well, that's a subject, is always open. That's a predicate. There's your verb. And someone is always there. Well, that's a complete sentence. It completes my thought. So this is an independent clause. What did we say about combining sentences? Down the street from the college I attend, that is not an independent clause. So you know there's going to be no comma there. Okay. This is a dependent clause. And so it is DC, comma, IC. So go through here and find the one where you've got comma after attend, and you're good to go. You have to admire the underlined part of this is President and founder Bill Williams. You have to admire the honesty of a company whose slogan is just the best. Glory Foods president and founder Bill Williams explains. Now, I'm just going to look at this part. It's underlined, and I may have to come back and read the rest of the sentence, but I know timing's an issue for me, so I'm going to kind of see what this is. All right, president and founder, president and founder, president and founder. All right, I know it's looking for positives. So I have to figure out, do I need Bill Williams to be set off by commas? Glory Foods. Okay, That's the name of the company. Well, who, the president, okay, and founder, those are not the same thing. Okay, just because you run a company does not mean that you started the company. So this is your compound subject, and we talked about that. You only use comma fanboy when it's two complete sentences, so we know that it's not no change. Now, we still have three choices here. So, Glory Foods president and founder, well, no, because it's for the same reason that one's not. President and founder Bill Williams. Do we need Bill Williams? Is this necessary to the sentence? Pause me, what do you think? Okay. There's only one president and one founder, so it's good that we know his name. I'm glad I know his name, but I don't need it. So this can be crossed out, and that makes this the correct answer. Okay? So it's D. Then again, you can sometimes get lucky, and a ball you thought was lost will inexplicably bounce back into play. So the part that they have underlined in the test is this right here. And so you're looking at first this. Just looking at the words, I'm automatically going, this is a verb. You're not going to separate the verb. And so I'm going to automatically go, okay, no change. Oh, heck, this is a verb and it's got two commas. Definitely not. Being an English teacher, I know it's not going to be this one, but for you guys, you will probably be down to B and D, and you'll probably have to figure it out from there. So now I'm going to look back at the sentence. A ball you thought was lost will, nope, inexplicably bounce back. This is not a dependent clause, so I'm going to take out that comma. That leaves me with B. So you don't separate your subject and your predicate. Suddenly, without warning, and then the part that is underlined as letters in front of you tumbles to the bottom of the screen. So I remember the rule where she said you don't separate prepositional phrases. And you actually have 3, 4, 5 prepositional phrases right here. So in terms of all of these things, you're going through, well, comma, but all these prepositional phrases, don't try to figure out anything in terms of, does it make sense? Is it too long? Should it be written better? Yes, that's a lot of prepositional phrases, and yes, it's not a great sentence. But grammatically, you're not going to put commas there because it is too, you don't separate prepositional phrases. So just glancing at it, comma, no comma, here's my answer, move on. All right, I'm looking at the answer choices first because that's what my eye goes to. I see the word however, and I know however is going to have or, comma. These are the only choices that we have, so it's not C. Looking at the sentence, because this is the part that's underlined, I know it's not A because there's nothing there. Now I have to go through and look at it and go, is this a complete sentence? Not all viruses. That is not a complete sentence, so you can't use a semicolon. It's D, pick it and move on. Okay, there's no need for you to waste the time to go, okay, do I need to put a comma here? No. Not all viruses. That is not a complete sentence. It can't be the semicolon. Choose D, move on. Grandpa could punch in the time and the channel of his favorite news program. So the part that is underlined here is time and the channel. Well, I'm just glancing at my answer choices. It's not going to come after and. And so that leaves me with 3. So what I have to do first is see, is this 2 complete sentences? Grandpa could punch in the time. Okay, subject, could what? Could punch in the time. Okay, so we've got an independent clause here. So the question is, Is this part of that independent clause, or is this a compound predicate? Okay. The channel of his favorite daily news program. That is not a complete sentence. So we know that this is part of the complete sentence. So there's not going to be a comma before the word and. So you've got the compound subject right there. Punch in the time and the channel is his favorite daily news program, and so it's got to be C. Of his favorite news program describes channel, so you're not going to separate the two. Okay. The music and the instrument were adopted by musicians in that region who began to use the accordion, all the way down to music, in their own dance music, hupangos and rancheras. Pronunciation of that may be off, and I apologize. This one I actually had to think about, because when I took out, I did the do I need this rule? Okay. And so I looked at this and I said, okay, who began to use the accordion? And then I said, do I need in their own dance music? Well, okay, now I'm thinking, okay, do I need that? It was actually iffy. I wasn't quite sure if I needed it, because hupangos and rancheras, well, that's dance music. So, but then you have the accordion, and so I don't know what that kind of music is, so I don't know if I need it. So this one I had to kind of go back to other grammar rules to figure out what it was. Well, I see the word here. I see the word who, and it has a comma before it. Okay. So I said, okay, well, that is telling me that this whole clause is not needed. So where does that clause end? Who began to use the accordion in? Oh, I've got two prepositions right here, so I can't separate those. And so I look down at my choices, and I've got to cross that one out, and I've got to cross that one out. That leaves me with these two. So I've got who began to use the accordion in their own dance music, hipagos and ranchera. Now I've got to figure out, okay, is this part necessary? Okay, so do I put a comma here or do I not? Okay, so back to what I was doing. Sorry, had a fire alarm. So who begins our phrase? And then you've got to put a comma here because this describes it. It's in a positive. It comes at the end of the sentence. Okay, so it is B. During the early morning hours, and this one is 1965 all the way through engineers. So I see the word during, and I remember from the lesson that that's a key, that this is probably going to be a dependent clause. So during what? Early morning hours of October 28th, 1865, or 1965, sorry. And so we know that our dependent clause is going to end here. Engineer stationed 630 feet. Okay, so I have my dependent clause. I look down at my answer choices, and I see this is a period and this is a semicolon. Cannot be it, because this is a dependent clause. It's a fragment, so we know those cannot be the correct answer. So that leaves us with A and B. According to our rules, when you have a dependent clause that comes first, you put a comma after it. Right? Putting the word and here would create another fragment. And engineers sitting? No. So it's not going to be B, and that leaves us with A. And then you have your date. That's why that comma is right there. So the part that is underlined here are people who have walked along with me. For years, I have seen pictures of other Miami, many of them the ancestors of the people who walked along with me to the longhouse that summer evening. Well, we know that who can sometimes start unappositive phrase, but the comma is not going to go after it. So we're going to cross that out. And so the question that you're going to have to ask yourself is, do you need this phrase or this clause? If you do, you got to keep your comma, and if you don't, then you'll take it out. So for years I have seen the pictures of other Miami, many of them ancestors of the people. Okay. That's a complete sentence. It makes sense. Okay. Who walked along with me to the long house that summer evening? So let's look at.
We found an extra.
So for this one, you gotta love those bells. Okay. Even if you do need this, then who walked along with me? You're not going to separate that, so that crosses out C. That leaves us with A and D. So for this one, it ties back to that tip I told you to be careful about. Who walked along with me? Alright, so now you have to go see, okay, do I need this information? Many of them the ancestors of the people. Which people? I have to know that. And so you're going to do D. Okay, so on this one, the part that is underlined is alpha or dominant pair. Now I see the word or right there, and so now I've got to figure out, okay, I remember fanboy is only used with clauses. All right, so I see the word or, and I remember what she said about comma fanboy, and or is one of those. So I know that it is not going to be no change because you cannot put the comma after or. Now we have to figure out, all right, is it two complete sentences, or is it compound, predicate, or is it an appositive? So let's look at it. Or dominant. Well, no, that is not a fanboy conjunction. Okay. So usually begun by the alpha. Okay. So do we need or dominant set off? Does this define alpha? Well, yeah, that's actually a characteristic of alpha. So we are actually going to set this off as an appositive. So it's going to be or dominant. Okay. This one was kind of tricky simply because it has the. So this one was kind of tricky just because, and I'm sorry about that. The kids were coming in for something and I had to push and pause. Okay. So because it's not the two complete sentences, and so your brain may have gone to automatically, hey, we don't need this, but you do want to make sure that none of the other rules apply. ACT loves to do that. In and of itself, this is not a complex sentence, but because you're in a hurry, your brain is going to go to the easiest rule. It's going to go, that's not two complete sentences, no punctuation, move on. You do have to read the whole sentence, and you do have to look at, okay, what is this? The first thing that may have tripped you up is it said by the alpha or dominant pair of wolves, and you may have thought, okay, I need to keep dominant and together. And it actually took me a second because I thought of that too, but then I realized dominant is actually defining alpha. And so the sentence usually begun by the alpha pair of wolves, that I need. And so this has to be set off because you don't need dominant. That is just basically saying what an alpha is. Okay. All right, next one. What's already clear is this. Oh, let's go ahead and underline the part that we need. I see the word that. Okay, so I don't need to think about too much right now. I know that it is not this one. Okay, and I know that it is not this one, simply because of the comma rule that deals with that. What's already clear is that. So is it this one or is it this one? So no change is, well, first let's back up. Let's address this first. your mind may have skipped over this. And so it could cause you to miss the question if you don't know what this is. This is the contraction for it is. So what is already clear is that the stereotypical image of the lone wolf howling at the moon obscures the importance. So you do have this is already in the sentence. And so now you have to look at it and go, okay, do we set this off or do we not? What is already clear? That does not really complete a sentence. I mean, you got a subject and you kind of have a verb, but what is already clear? You're not completing your thought. And so you do need this part, and so it's going to be D, because it's necessary information. But this apparent chaos, and this is the part that's underlined, is the subject of scientific research. Yes, it starts with the word but. That would be addressed in a different question from the ACT, so do not let that throw you. A lot of times they will put, like this would be underlined, it would be 1, and then this would be 2. So don't let the fact that this is wrong throw you from this, because it has nothing to do with this question. But this apparent chaos is the subject of the scientific research. Well, you remember the rule. You do not separate your subject from your predicate, so it can't be that one. I'll address the colons later, but let's see if we can figure it out even without knowing the colon rule. All right. But this apparent chaos is the subject. Well, that. All right, so we're looking at what is the actual subject of the sentence. What's chaos? Okay. Chaos is what? Subject of scientific research. So you do have, if you take all this information, a complete sentence. This actually kept throwing me too, which when I was doing my explanation, because I kept coming back to it. So just watch out for that. This apparent chaos is the subject of the research. That is a complete sentence when it deals with just the part that they have underlined. And so it would be no change. It may not throw you, but it does a lot of times for English teachers, since we want to go through and fix all their other grammatical mistakes. But because this is the actual part of the sentence, the complete part, you're not going to separate that with commas. All right, this one was one of those fun ones that it took me a minute of reading it carefully in order to get, and it goes all the way to Anne Bancroft. And this ties into that rule I told you about with names and titles. All right. In 2001, polar adventurers Liv Arnesen of Norway. So of Norway is telling us who she is. So the question is do we set of Norway off with commas? And Anne Bancroft of Minnesota. So we have to decide, is this necessary information or is it not? Just take it kind of step by step. I'm going to, in my mind, take this out because it has nothing to do with my question and it's thrown me off. So polar adventurers Liv Arnesen of Norway and Anne Bancroft of Minnesota. That's a compound subject. So I know that I'm not going to separate Liv and Anne. Okay, so we're going to take out, in terms of our choices, the one that messes that up. So that would be no change. Okay, so polar adventurer Liv Arnesen of Norway, comma, and Anne Bancroft of Minnesota. Well, you still have this comma here that's kind of throwing that one off, so we're going to take that one out. And this leaves me with the remaining two. This is where I have to actually use the other parts of the sentence to help me out, because you could use different grammar rules or different comma rules, and the sentence, the way it's worded, it's kind of confusing. So what I did is I said Liv Arnesen of Norway. Okay, so comma there, of Norway, and Anne Bancroft, comma, of Minnesota. Well, if I did this one, Minnesota would have to have a comma after it for it to match, because let me switch colors here to red. So this is C. C would look like this, comma of Norway and Anne Bancroft, comma of Minnesota. And then let's do blue for D. Arneson of Norway, comma. No, there's nothing there. There's no punctuation in D. Okay. Okay. All right, so now this would be one of those examples of writing in the book really will help you. And how do you know which ones you write in the book and which ones not? Well, you want to do the ones like here where you're reading this and you're going, what? I'm confused. What is this sentence saying? Those are the ones where setting it up like this, narrowing it down to 2, and then figuring out kind of what the sentence would look like in each instance. So with the red one, which is C, you've got Liv Arneson, comma, of Norway. Well, if this wasn't a positive, there should be another comma here, and there's not. So I'm actually going to go ahead and take that out because it can't be it. And then that leaves us with D, even though that is a very wordy sentence. The writer of this is saying that we need to know that Liv Arneson lives in Norway, and we need to know that she lives in Minnesota. Okay, so that's one of those really tricky ones. The part that's underlined here, hiking unassisted up the 10,000-foot high Sigyn Glacier. And, well, that's a fanboy conjunction, so I'm going to go back up and go, okay, is that a complete sentence? Hiking unassisted up the high glacier, that is not a complete sentence. Okay, so fanboy, no. Okay. Each one pulled a sled that weighed more than 260 pounds. This is where you need to kind of know what these are. So when she was going up, when each woman pulled more than 260 pounds, well, that doesn't make sense. When what? No. Okay, so going up the glacier while each woman pulled a sled that weighed more than 260 pounds? No, because you're not completing your thought. You're not giving me what I need. Hiking up the glacier, each woman pulled a sled. Well, that works. So you're actually going to delete. Okay? Don't be afraid of deleting words from the sentence. Delete and omit, because omit means to delete. Don't be afraid of them. At least half of the time, they're going to be the correct answer.